Hello friends, and welcome to a lecture of Operation Research. This is Professor Arvind Prasad. Today we will understand what is a two-player zero-sum game. Let's see what are the rules of the game. Players have to raise either one or two fingers. Player 1 wins if it is even, that is the sum of the two fingers raised, that is if player 1 raises one finger and player 2 raises one finger. So the sum is now 2 and it is even. Player 1 wins. Player 2 wins if it is odd. The winner in this game gets rupee 1 from the loser and the sum of net winning is 0. Now this is a concept that needs to be elaborated. If we take, let us say, 100 games, as we can see here, there is a 50% chance of either player 1 or player 2 winning. So if we see the net earnings of player 1 and player 2, it's always going to be, the sum of those net earnings is always going to be 0, because if player 1 wins, player 2 loses, and if player 2 wins, then player 1 loses. So the net sum of winnings here is going to be 0. Now what are the assumptions here? The assumptions are that each player is aware that there are only two strategies. Both players are rational. Each player promotes his own welfare. That is, there is no consideration for any other player. He promotes his own welfare and he has no remorse in defeating the other player. He is only concerned about himself. And the player is unaware of the opponent's strategy before the game. That is, what I mean by this is, both the players are aware that yes, there can be only two strategies in this game. But before the game starts and the player plays his strategy, both are unaware that what is the opponent's strategy going to be. So such kind of game has a payoff table, and the payoff table is on your screen. The payoff table shows what is the winning in case of player 1 or player 2 winning, what is the amount he would win, and what is the strategy player 1 or player 2 can use. Now in the column number 2, we have player number 1's strategies. That is, player number 1 has a strategy 1 or 2. Similarly, player number 2 also has a strategy 1 or 2. Now what does this mean? If player number 1 raises one finger and player number 2 also raises one finger, then it is even. Therefore, player number 1 wins 1 rupee. Now if player number 1 raises one finger and player number 2 raises two finger, it's going to be odd. In this case, player number 1 loses a rupee. Now if player number 1 raises two fingers and player number 1 raises one finger, it is odd and therefore player number 1 will lose a rupee. Similarly, if player number 1 raises two fingers and player number 2 also raises two fingers, in this case it's even and player number 1 wins a rupee. Now remember one thing, the loss of player number 2, that is, this is the loss of player number 2. The loss of player number 2 is the gain of player number 1. Similarly, one needs to understand the loss of player number 1 is the gain of player number 2. This is what this table explains. So this payoff table explains the strategy. So that was all about, in a two-player zero-sum game, how do we draw a payoff table, understand a payoff table. Based on this payoff table, we can find out what would be the way player number 1 can maximize his wins. So that was all about this subject. That's the end of the lecture. Goodbye, friends. Do subscribe my channel. Have a great day.